Get out of the way. Gate B-22 at Charlotte Douglas Airport. A security officer snatched a passport from a black woman's hand. He flipped it open. Fake. Clearly fake. She stood still. You pathetic people. The same old trick. He held the passport up in front of everyone. London, Geneva, come on. Black people like you belong in the garbage dump, not at the airport. Her voice remained calm and soft. Sir, this passport is valid. Laughter erupted. He laughed in her face. Valid? You disgust me. The only thing that's valid here is my right to prevent filthy people like you from boarding this plane. He shoved it into the shredder. The blades screeched. The blue cover crumbled into shreds. 50 passengers stood frozen. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She just looked at him and smiled. Earlier that morning, the sky over Charlotte was still dark. Whitney Hargrove stepped out of a rideshare. The morning air was sharp. It smelled like jet fuel and cold concrete. She pulled her carry-on behind her, heels clicking against the curb in a rhythm as steady as her breathing. She was the kind of woman you'd notice but never hear. Navy blazer tailored to the stitch. White silk blouse, slim black trousers with a crease sharp enough to cut glass, no flashy jewelry, no oversized logos, just a thin gold watch on her left wrist and a leather briefcase that had seen more airports than most pilots. Whitney Hargrove was a senior federal aviation inspector for the United States Department of Transportation. She had spent years on the job. She had audited airlines across the country. She had grounded aircraft. She had recommended the suspension of airline operating certificates. When Whitney Hargrove walked into an airline's headquarters, executives canceled lunch. But today, she wasn't working. Today, she was just a daughter flying home to see her mother in Washington, D.C. No federal badge on display, no credential letter in hand. Both were tucked inside her briefcase, zipped in an interior pocket she hadn't opened in days. She moved through the terminal with the ease of someone who had done this countless times. She bought a small black coffee from a kiosk near baggage claim. The barista smiled. Whitney smiled back. She left a generous tip on the cup. She called her mother while walking toward security. I'll be there by lunch, Mama. You better? I made cobbler. Whitney laughed. A real one. Warm and loose. The kind of laugh that made strangers nearby smile without knowing why. She cleared TSA quickly. No beeps, no flags, no secondary screening. She found the gate, sat down near the window, crossed her legs and opened a book. The spine was creased. She'd read it before. She didn't mind. From the outside, Whitney Hargrove looked like any other early morning traveler. Calm, quiet, ordinary. That was the thing about Whitney. She never needed anyone to know who she was. But someone at that gate was about to find out anyway. Now, let's talk about the man behind the podium. Vance Whitaker arrived for his shift late. No apology, no rush. He strolled into the gate area with a coffee in one hand and his Summit Air lanyard swinging from his neck like a badge of honor. He had been on the job for years, senior gate agent. He liked the title. He liked the way it sounded when he corrected newer employees. He liked the small kingdom his podium gave him, the power to let people through or hold them back. The terminal smelled like floor cleaner and stale pastries. Vance didn't notice. He never noticed things that didn't serve him. He logged into his terminal, scanned the flight manifest, and yawned. A white businessman walked up. His boarding pass wouldn't scan. Vance smiled, tapped a few keys, and fixed it in seconds. No worries, sir. Happens all the time. Minutes later, a young black woman in athleisure approached. Same problem, different response. Vance took her pass, held it at arm's length, squinted like he was reading ancient scripture. ID. She handed over her driver's license. He studied it, flipped it over, studied it again. Step aside. I'll get to you. She stepped aside. She didn't argue. She didn't ask why. She just moved like she'd been moved before. Nobody said a word, but someone was watching. Loretta Vaughn had been sitting near the window. Retired schoolteacher from Raleigh, traveling to Baltimore to see her grandkids. She had watched Vance handle passenger after passenger. She didn't need a clipboard to see the pattern. White face, smile, scan a guy, black face, pause, inspect, wait. Her fingers tightened around the armrest, her jaw clenched. The overhead speakers crackled with a gate change announcement. Fluorescent lights buzzed above like trapped insects. Loretta looked at Whitney across the waiting area, then back at Vance. She whispered to herself, "Lord, don't let this man start something today." But it seemed the universe had other plans. The boarding announcement came. Summit Air flight to Washington, D.C., now boarding. Whitney closed her book, slipped it into her briefcase, stood up, smoothed her blazer, and joined the line. The line was short. She'd be at the podium in minutes. The terminal hummed with the usual morning chaos. Rolling suitcases clattered across tile floors. A baby cried somewhere nearby. The smell of cinnamon pretzels drifted from a cart down the corridor, mixing with recycled air conditioning that tasted faintly metallic. Whitney didn't rush. She never rushed. She stood with her boarding pass in one hand and her passport in the other, waiting patiently, like she had waited countless times before at countless different gates. The line moved. One passenger, 2, 3. Each one scanned and waved through. Vance barely looked at their faces, just the passes. Beep, go, beep, go, beep, go. Then it was Whitney's turn. She stepped forward and placed her passport and boarding pass on the counter. Not handed, placed, gently. The way you set down something that belongs to you. Vance glanced up. His eyes moved from the passport to her face, then back to the passport, then back to her face. Something shifted. It was small, almost invisible. A tightening in the jaw, a narrowing around the eyes, the kind of micro-expression most people would miss. But Loretta Vaughn didn't miss it. She was standing just behind Whitney in line, and she saw it like a flashing sign. Vance picked up the passport. Not the way he'd picked up the others, quick, casual, automatic. He pinched it between his thumb and index finger, held it slightly away from his body, like it carried a disease. He opened it slowly, page by page. His eyes scanned each visa stamp with exaggerated suspicion. London, Geneva, Nairobi, Tokyo, Sao Paulo. Every page told a story of a woman who had seen the world. But Vance wasn't reading stories. He was building a case. This passport has a lot of stamps. It wasn't a compliment. It was an accusation. Whitney's expression didn't change. "I travel frequently for work." "Work?" Vance repeated the word like it tasted sour. "What kind of work requires this much travel?" "Federal government." She said it plainly. No emphasis, no flex. Just 2 words and the truth. Vance stared at her, then at the passport, then at her again. "Federal government," he repeated. A smirk crawled across his lips. Right. He flipped to the photo page, held it up to the fluorescent light above his head, tilted it left, tilted it right, squinted like a jeweler examining a fake diamond. The line behind Whitney was growing. Passengers shifted on their feet. A man in a gray suit checked his watch. A woman with a toddler on her hip sighed loudly. Nobody said anything. Vance called over a younger female agent. She walked up, coffee still in hand. "Does this look right to you?" He held the passport out like evidence at a crime scene. "The laminate seems off." The younger agent glanced at it, took a half-second look. "It looks fine to me, Vance." "It looks fine," he mimicked. his voice dripping with contempt. "I've been doing this longer than you've been alive. Go back to your register." She walked away, head down, mouth shut. Vance turned back to Whitney. He tossed the passport onto the counter between them. It slid toward her, then stopped. "I'm going to need secondary identification." Whitney reached into her briefcase calmly, slowly. She produced her driver's license and placed it beside the passport. Vance picked up the license, looked at it, looked at the passport, looked at her. "This doesn't match?" Whitney's voice remained level. "It absolutely matches. My name is Whitney Hargrove. That is what both documents say." "Don't tell me what matches and what doesn't." His voice rose, not shouting, worse, that cold, controlled kind of loud that says, "I dare you to challenge me. I decide what's real at this gate, not you." Passengers were staring now. Not pretending to look at phones, not glancing sideways, full-on staring. A teenager in the back of the line lifted his phone slightly, then lowered it. Too nervous. But Darius Caldwell wasn't nervous. He was standing nearby. Software developer from Atlanta. Connecting flight. He had watched the entire exchange from the moment Vance picked up the passport like it was contaminated. And moments ago, he had pressed record. His phone was angled, low, steady. The red dot blinked silently. Vance didn't notice. He was too busy performing. He picked up Whitney's passport one more time, opened it to the photo page, held it next to her face, made a show of comparing the two. His head swiveling back and forth like a bad detective in a daytime drama. "I'm not satisfied this is a legitimate travel document." Whitney's chin lifted slightly. "Excuse me?" Vance's lips curled. He looked her dead in the eyes. "I already told you, black folks like you don't fly to places like London and Geneva. Your kind belongs in rat holes, not on my aircraft." The gate area went cold. Not quiet. Cold. The kind of silence that presses against your eardrums. A child tugged on his mother's sleeve. She pulled him close without a word. Loretta Vaughn put her hand over her mouth. And then Vance did it. He turned to the podium, picked up Whitney's passport with 2 fingers, and fed it into the desk-mounted document shredder behind the counter. The machine screamed. A high-pitched mechanical shriek that echoed across the gate area like a siren. Blue cover, white pages. Years of travel stamps. All of it pulled into the blades and spit out the other side in thin, curling ribbons. That's all it took to destroy a United States passport. Whitney watched the ribbons fall into the bin below the shredder. Her jaw tightened. Her nostrils flared. But her hands didn't shake. Her voice didn't crack. She looked at Vance with an expression that could freeze lava. "You just destroyed a federal document. A United States passport." Vance smirked, brushed a ribbon of shredded paper off the counter. "I just protected this flight from a fraudulent document. You're welcome to take it up with customer service." He reached for his radio, pressed the button. "Security to the gate. I've got a passenger with fraudulent documents causing a disturbance." Whitney didn't move, didn't raise her voice, didn't take a single step backward. She reached into her briefcase, took out her phone, dialed a number from memory. Her voice was calm, measured. The kind of calm that comes not from weakness, but from knowing exactly what was about to happen. "This is Whitney Hargrove, credential number DOT-8841. I need Regina Thorpe on the line immediately." She hung up, slipped the phone back into her pocket, and waited. Loretta Vaughn walked out of line and stood beside Whitney. Her voice shook, but her feet were planted. "I saw the whole thing, sweetheart. Every word. That man had no right." Whitney looked at her. For the first time since the confrontation began, something soft flickered across her face. Gratitude, brief and quiet. Then it was gone. 2 airport police officers arrived. Heavy boots on tile, radios crackling. Vance pointed at Whitney before they could speak. She tried to board with a forged passport. I handled it. One officer looked at Whitney. The other looked at the shredder bin full of blue and white confetti. Whitney reached into her briefcase one more time, produced her driver's license and a Department of Transportation business card. She held them out. Steady hand, steady eyes. My name is Whitney Hargrove, Senior Federal Aviation Inspector, United States Department of Transportation. The officer took the card, read it again. His eyebrows rose slowly. He looked at his partner. His partner looked at Vance. Vance's smirk was gone. The 2 officers separated them without a word. One took Vance to the left side of the podium. The other guided Whitney 3 steps to the right. Close enough to see each other, far enough to stop whatever was coming next. The terminal lights above the gate flickered once. The air smelled like burned plastic and sweat. Somewhere behind them, the shredder bin sat on the floor like a trash can full of evidence. Blue and white ribbons curling over the edges. The officer with Vance pulled out a small notepad. Standard procedure, calm voice, neutral face. Tell me what happened. Vance didn't hesitate. He talked fast, loud, with the confidence of a man who had never been questioned in his life. I flagged a suspicious passenger. The passport didn't look right, the laminate was off, the stamps were inconsistent. I've been doing this for years and I know a fraudulent document when I see one. The officer wrote something down. Didn't look up. Did you follow Summit Air's document verification protocol? Vance blinked. I used my training and experience. That's not what I asked. Did you call the TSA document verification hotline before destroying the passport? Silence. Mr. Whitaker? I made a judgment call. So, that's a no. Vance's neck turned red. Not embarrassment. Anger. The kind of anger that comes from being questioned by someone he considered beneath the conversation. Look, I've been at this gate for years. I've caught things TSA missed. I don't need a hotline to tell me what my own eyes can see. The officer stopped writing, looked at Vance for a long, quiet moment. What exactly did your eyes see, Mr. Whitaker? Vance hesitated, his mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. She didn't look right. Didn't look right how? She just... The passport had stamps from all over the world. London, Geneva, Nairobi. A woman like that doesn't travel to those places. A woman like what? The question hung in the air like smoke. Vance's jaw clenched. He knew what he meant. He just wasn't going to say it with a badge-wearing officer writing everything down. Forget it. I did my job. On the other side of the podium, the second officer was speaking with Whitney. His tone was different. Not because he was nicer, because he had read the business card. Ma'am, can you walk me through what happened? Whitney spoke the way she always spoke. Clear, precise. No wasted words. She recounted every moment from the second she placed her passport on the counter to the second it went into the shredder. She named every phrase Vance had used. She described the younger agent who had been called over and dismissed. She left nothing out. When she finished, she paused. He destroyed a valid United States passport issued by the Department of State. Under federal law, that is a federal crime. The officer stopped writing, looked at his partner across the podium, picked up his radio. Dispatch, this is the officer at the gate. I need a supervisor down here. And contact TSA, Federal Coordination. We may have a federal document, destruction issue. The radio crackled back. Acknowledged. Vance heard the words. His head snapped toward the officer. For the first time, his posture changed. His shoulders tightened. His eyes darted from the officer to Whitney, to the shredder bin and back, but he didn't stay quiet. Men like Vance never do. He pointed at Whitney from across the podium, finger extended, voice rising. You're seriously going to take her word over mine? I'm a Summit Air employee. I have authority at this gate. She showed up with a fake passport, and now she's playing the victim. The officer didn't respond. Didn't even look at him. That made Vance louder. This is exactly what people like her do. They flash a card, throw around some title, and suddenly everyone forgets that I'm the one who caught the fraud. The officer put his hand up. Mr. Whitaker, I'm going to need you to lower your voice. I will not lower my voice. I did my job and now I'm being treated like the criminal? The gate area had gone completely still. Every passenger in the vicinity had stopped moving, stopped talking, stopped pretending not to watch. A woman near the window had her hand pressed against her chest. A man in a business suit shook his head slowly. The toddler from earlier had buried his face in his mother's neck, and Darius Caldwell's phone was still recording, steady, silent. The red dot blinking in the corner like a heartbeat. Later, the station manager arrived. He came fast, tie crooked, coffee stain on his shirt. He'd been pulled from the operations office. The manager took one look at the scene and his face went pale. 2 officers, a shredder bin full of passport confetti, a black woman standing with her arms at her sides like a statue, and Vance Whitaker pacing behind the podium muttering to himself. Vance. The manager's voice was tight. What happened? I flagged a suspicious passenger. Destroyed a fraudulent passport. Standard procedure. The manager looked at the shredder bin, then at Whitney, then back at Vance. Did you call the TSA hotline? No answer. Vance. Did you call the hotline before you shredded a United States passport? I didn't need to. I could tell. You could tell what? Vance stepped closer, lowered his voice, but not low enough. People like her, they come through here with documents that don't add up. Somebody has to do something. You know how it is? The manager flinched. Actually flinched, like the words had reached across and slapped him. He stepped back, pulled out his phone, dialed Summit Air Corporate. While the manager made the call, something else was happening. Something Vance couldn't see, couldn't hear, and couldn't stop. Darius Caldwell had ended the recording. Every word, every sneer, every ribbon of shredded passport. He opened Twitter, typed the caption and hit post. Airport gate agent just shredded a black woman's passport in front of everyone. Charlotte Airport. At Summit Air. Explain this. Hashtag Shreddergate. Within minutes, the video had spread rapidly. Within the hour, it crossed 1 million views. Quote tweets exploded. Screenshots flooded Instagram. News desks from CNN to local Charlotte affiliates started calling Summit Air's press office. Civil rights organizations issued statements. The hashtag climbed. First trending locally, then statewide, then nationally. Hashtag Shreddergate. 2 words, 1 video, a career in free fall. But Vance didn't know any of this yet. He was still in the gate area, arms crossed, convinced he was right. Back at the airport, the pressure was building from every direction. Summit Air Corporate called the manager directly. They had seen the video. A senior vice president was on the line. The instruction was immediate and absolute. Remove Vance Whitaker from the gate area. Place him in a non-public location. Do not let him speak to passengers, press, or anyone with a phone. The manager walked over to Vance. His voice was barely above a whisper. You need to come with me. Now. Why? Because there's a video, Vance. And the whole country is watching it. Vance's face went blank. Not scared. Not sorry. Blank. The way a man looks when reality starts cracking through a wall he built with his own ego. He was escorted to a back office behind the Summit Air operations desk. The door closed behind him. The fluorescent light above buzzed like a dying wasp. He sat in a plastic chair, alone. Meanwhile, Whitney's phone call had connected. Her colleague had reached Regina Thorpe, Regional Director of the Department of Transportation's Office of Aviation Consumer Protection. Regina was already in Charlotte for a separate meeting. She was in a car headed to the airport. 2T. SA Federal Air Marshals stationed at the airport received a briefing. They arrived at the gate within minutes, badges visible, faces unreadable. The flight was delayed. The gate agent's podium was empty. Passengers sat in rows of plastic chairs, whispering. Some scrolled through their phones, watching the same video they had just witnessed in person. The surreal loop of living through something, and then watching it go viral in real time. Several passengers approached the officer voluntarily. They gave statements. Every single one confirmed the same story. Every single one used the same word, unprovoked. Loretta Vaughn was the last to give her statement. She sat down across from the officer, folded her hands in her lap, and spoke in the steady, measured voice of a woman who had spent decades teaching children right from wrong. That man didn't check her passport. He attacked her, and he did it because she was black. I watched him let white passengers through with a smile. That woman got nothing but hate. She paused. Her eyes were wet. I'm 62 years old. I've seen this my whole life. But I've never seen someone destroy a passport right in front of a person's face like that. That wasn't security. That was cruelty. The officer closed his notepad, nodded once. Thank you, ma'am. Loretta stood up, straightened her jacket, walked back to her seat, and waited, like everyone else, for what came next. The black sedan pulled up to the curb at Terminal B. Regina Thorpe stepped out before the driver could open her door. Dark gray suit, federal ID badge clipped to her left lapel, black heels that cracked against pavement like a judge's gavel. She moved through the terminal entrance with the kind of walk that made automatic doors feel slow. She didn't stop at the coffee kiosk, didn't check the departures board, didn't look at her phone. She already knew everything she needed to know. Her assistant had briefed her in the car. Credential number DOT-8841, Whitney Hargrove. Passport destroyed by a gate agent. Video going viral. Regina had been with the Department of Transportation for years. Regional Director of the Office of Aviation Consumer Protection. She had shut down airline operations in multiple states. She had testified before Congress. She had made grown men in boardrooms crumble with nothing but a manila folder and a calm voice. Today, she wasn't calm. Today, she was furious. And the only thing more dangerous than Regina Thorpe angry was Regina Thorpe angry and quiet. She reached the Summit Air Operations area quickly. The sergeant met her at the door. He had been expecting her. One look at the federal badge and he stepped aside. Ma'am, where's the employee? Back office. End of the hall. Regina didn't go to Whitney first. She went straight for Vance. The door opened without a knock. Vance looked up from his plastic chair. His eyes were red, not from crying, from staring at the wall, replaying the morning in his head and still somehow believing he was right. Then he saw the badge. U.S. Department of Transportation. His mouth opened slightly. No sound came out. Regina didn't sit. She stood in the doorway, filled it. Her voice was low, steady, and sharp enough to cut bone. My name is Regina Thorpe, Regional Director, United States Department of Transportation, Office of Aviation Consumer Protection. She let each word land like a footstep in an empty church. Vance gripped the edges of his chair. His knuckles turned white. The woman whose passport you destroyed this morning is Senior Federal Aviation Inspector Whitney Hargrove. She has the authority to ground aircraft. She has the authority to suspend airline operating certificates. She has the authority to recommend federal criminal charges against airline personnel who violate federal regulations. Regina paused. took one step into the room. She reports directly to me. The fluorescent light buzzed. The air conditioner hummed. Vance's breathing was the loudest sound in the room. I didn't know who she... You didn't ask. She didn't say? She shouldn't have to. Regina held his gaze for 3 full seconds. 3 seconds that felt like 30. Then she turned and walked out. The door stayed open behind her, like it didn't matter anymore. Like Vance didn't matter anymore. She found the manager in the hallway. He was leaning against the wall, phone in hand, looking like a man who hadn't taken a full breath in an hour. Mr. Greer? He straightened up immediately. Effective immediately, the Department of Transportation is opening a formal investigation into Summit Air's passenger handling procedures at this station. The manager's phone nearly slipped from his hand. Ma'am, I assure you, this was an isolated... It wasn't. Regina cut him off without raising her voice. We've received multiple discrimination complaints against Summit Air at Charlotte Douglas in recent years, most involving passengers of color. All of them resolved internally. She let the last 2 words hang, which means buried. The manager said nothing. There was nothing to say. Your airline has been on our watch list, Mr. Greer. This incident didn't put you there. It just moved your timeline up considerably. The manager swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed like a fishing lure. Can I at least rebook Ms. Hargrove on the next available? Ms. Hargrove won't be needing your airline services today. Regina straightened her badge. Or possibly ever again. Later, Whitney Hargrove was escorted by airport staff to a competitor airline's gate. She was offered a first-class seat on the next flight to Washington, D.C. She accepted without comment. She picked up her briefcase. The same briefcase that held the federal badge she never needed to show. The same briefcase that held the credential letter Vance never gave her the chance to present. She thanked the officers, nodded once to Loretta Vaughan, who was still sitting in the waiting area, watching everything unfold. Loretta nodded back, eyes wet, chin high. Whitney walked away, heels clicking on the tile, steady, unhurried, the same rhythm as when she arrived, the same woman, the same walk. Nothing about her had changed. Everything about the world around her had. Back in the windowless office at the end of the hall, Vance Whitaker sat alone. The door was still open, but it might as well have been a cell. His phone buzzed on the table. He turned it over with shaking fingers. A text from a coworker. 1 line, 1 link. Bro, you're everywhere. He tapped the link. The video loaded. Millions of views. His face. His name badge. His voice saying words he couldn't take back, playing on loop for the entire country to hear. He tried to call his union representative. It rang. Voicemail. He tried again. Voicemail. He set the phone down, stared at the wall. The door opened. An airport police officer stepped in. No expression, no sympathy. Mr. Whitaker, you're being detained pending a federal referral. Do not leave this room. The door closed. The fluorescent light buzzed on. And Vance Whitaker sat in the silence of a life he had shredded. All by himself. It took only hours from the moment the shredder screamed at the gate to the moment Vance Whitaker stopped being a Summit Air employee. The call came. The manager was standing in his office, staring at the tarmac through smudged glass. His phone rang. Caller ID read Summit Air HQ, Atlanta. He answered on the first ring. The voice belonged to Summit Air's chief operating officer. No greeting, no buffer. Whitaker is done. Process him out. Now. The line went dead. The manager walked down the hall toward the back office. The room smelled like sweat and stale coffee. The fluorescent light hummed its same dead note. Vance sat in the same plastic chair, same crossed arms, same clenched jaw. His phone lay face down on the table like a grenade he was afraid to touch. The manager didn't sit, didn't close the door. "Your employment with Summit Air has been terminated effective immediately." Vance blinked. "Terminated?" "Yes." "For what?" "For destroying a passenger's passport without following a single protocol. For making discriminatory statements in front of 50 witnesses and a camera. For creating the worst crisis this airline has faced in years." Vance shot to his feet. The chair screeched across the floor. "This is insane. That passport was suspicious. She was suspicious. Everything about her was." "Was what, Vance?" Silence. "Finish that sentence. Because there's a video with millions of views where you already finished it for the whole world." Vance's mouth hung open. The number sat in the room like a third person. The manager extended his hand. "Your badge." Vance looked down at the Summit Air lanyard, the one he had worn for years, the one he straightened in the mirror every morning, the one that made him feel like somebody. He pulled it over his head, held it for a moment, then dropped it on the table with a small, pathetic click. 2 security guards stepped into the doorway. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Vance walked between them, down the corridor, past the operations desk, past the break room where his coffee mug still sat unwashed, past other gates. A woman looked up from her phone, squinted, looked back down, then snapped her head back up. "Oh my God, that's the shredder guy!" The whisper traveled like electricity. Heads turned one by one, phones lifted, not recording, just confirming, matching the face on their screens to the man walking past them, in a wrinkled uniform with no badge. Vance kept his eyes on the floor. The automatic doors opened. Charlotte morning air rushed in, thick, humid, tasting of exhaust and shame. He was outside, alone, unemployed. And the day was far from over. By afternoon, Summit Air released an official statement. The employee involved has been terminated effective immediately. Summit Air does not tolerate discrimination of any kind. We are cooperating fully with federal authorities. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Western District of North Carolina confirmed it was reviewing the case for federal charges: destruction of a federal document, deprivation of rights under color of authority, potential hate crime enhancement. Vance's attorney released a statement by evening. Mr. Whitaker regrets any misunderstanding and maintains he was acting in the best interest of flight safety. The internet did not accept the apology. Misunderstanding trended within the hour. Memes multiplied. Late-night hosts sharpened their monologues. Then, the dam broke. 3 former Summit Air passengers came forward. All people of color, all with stories about Vance Whitaker at that gate. One questioned for 20 minutes over a valid pass. One forced to unpack her carry-on in front of the entire gate. One denied boarding with no explanation. All 3 had filed complaints. All 3 complaints carried the same notation in Summit Air's system: resolved, no action needed. 3 words, 3 passengers, 3 buried truths. None of them would stay buried much longer. The investigation began days after the incident. It ended weeks later. What it uncovered made the passport look like the least of Summit Air's problems. The Department of Transportation sent federal auditors to Charlotte Douglas. They arrived with rolling briefcases and subpoena authority. No cameras, no press conferences, just clipboards and the kind of quiet determination that makes corporate lawyers lose sleep. They started with Vance Whitaker's personnel file. Years of service. Annual reviews that read like participation trophies. Meets expectations, no significant issues. Then they pulled the complaint records. Multiple formal complaints. All from passengers of color. One woman said he accused her of stealing her own suitcase. Another said he called security because her child's boarding pass looked altered. A man said Vance told him to go back to whatever country you came from. Complaints from passengers who took the time to fill out forms and call hotlines. Every single one marked the same way. Resolved. No action needed. The auditors traced the chain. Every complaint had been closed by the same person, Vance's shift supervisor. He had signed off on each one without conducting a single interview, without pulling footage, without contacting passengers. Acts of discrimination rubber-stamped like overtime requests. The supervisor was terminated the following week, but the auditors weren't finished. They expanded beyond Vance. They pulled complaint data for the entire station. The pattern was so clear, it could have been drawn with a ruler. Dozens of discrimination complaints, most involving passengers of color, many closed with no disciplinary action, no implicit bias training, no oversight, no accountability. A complaint system designed to protect employees, not passengers. The DOT's final report landed on Summit Air's executive desk like a bomb in a manila folder. Civil penalty of millions, one of the largest in agency history for a discrimination violation. Mandatory corrective actions, anti-discrimination training for all customer-facing employees nationwide, body-worn cameras at all gate podiums, quarterly compliance reports to the DOT, an independent ombudsman for all future discrimination complaints. Summit Air's CEO appeared in a video statement behind a mahogany desk. We failed. We failed our passengers. We failed our values. The comment section was not kind, but the fine was just the opening act. The real reckoning waited in a federal courtroom. Vance Whitaker was indicted by a grand jury weeks after the incident. 2 counts. Destruction of a federal document. Willful deprivation of civil rights. The trial began in October. Courtroom in the Western District of North Carolina, judge presiding, gallery packed, 3 cable networks carried it live. Whitney Hargrove took the stand. Navy suit, no jewelry, same thin gold watch. She sat with her hands folded, the same way she had stood at the gate. Still, composed, unshakable. The prosecutor walked her through the morning. The line, the passport, the insults, the shredder. She recounted every detail with the precision of years documenting airline violations for the federal government. When the prosecutor asked how she felt when the shredder activated, Whitney paused. I felt erased. 2 words. The courtroom went silent. Loretta Vaughn testified next, reading glasses on her forehead, purse on her lap, voice shaking, words steady. I watched that man smile at every white passenger, and I watched him treat that woman like dirt. He didn't check her passport. He destroyed it. There's a difference between doing your job and doing harm. That man chose harm. Darius Caldwell's video played on the courtroom screen. No edits. Raw footage of a man dismantling a woman's dignity in real time. 3 jurors looked away during the shredding. 1 covered her mouth. The 3 former passengers testified one after another. Different details, identical pattern, suspicion without cause, hostility without provocation, complaints without consequence. Then Vance took the stand. His attorney advised against it. Vance insisted. He still believed he could explain. He couldn't. Mr. Whitaker, did you call the TSA verification hotline before destroying the passport? No. Did you consult your station manager? No. What specific feature led you to conclude it was fraudulent? Silence. Mr. Whitaker? The stamps. The travel. It didn't make sense for someone like... Someone like what? Silence. No further questions. The jury deliberated hours. They returned. The 4-person stood. On count 1, destruction of a federal document, guilty. On count 2, willful deprivation of civil rights, guilty. Vance's head dropped. His attorney placed a hand on his shoulder. Vance didn't react. He stared at the table like it held the answer to a question he had never thought to ask. Sentencing came weeks later. Months in federal prison, supervised release, permanent ban from employment in any federally regulated transportation role. The judge spoke without notes. A passport is not a piece of paper. It is a declaration of citizenship. A promise made by a nation to its people that they belong, that they are free to move, that their identity is sovereign. When you destroyed that passport, you didn't just break a federal law. You broke that promise. And you broke it because of the color of a woman's skin. She looked directly at Vance. This court does not take that lightly. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Civil rights leaders stood at microphones. Whitney Hargrove was not there. She was at her desk in Washington reviewing an audit report. Her phone buzzed with the verdict. She read it, set it down, went back to work. Summit Air settled Whitney's civil lawsuit for an undisclosed sum and established a fund for diversity and inclusion in the aviation industry. The hashtag trended one last time. Hashtag Shreddergate. The top reply across every platform was the same sentence, shared and reshared until it became an anthem. She didn't need you to know who she was. Her passport was valid either way. Months later, the world had mostly moved on. The hashtag faded from trending lists. The news cycle churned forward. New outrages replaced old ones. That's how it works. The internet remembers everything and cares about nothing all at the same time. But for the people who lived through that gate, nothing faded. Nothing moved on. Every detail stayed exactly where it landed. Whitney Hargrove was promoted. A corner office in Washington with a view of the Potomac. Her name on the door. Her authority expanded. She gave one interview. Just one. A national outlet. The reporter asked her what she wanted people to remember about what happened at Charlotte Douglas. Whitney thought for a moment. Then she said something that would be quoted in law school textbooks for years to come. I didn't need anyone to know who I was for my passport to be valid. That's the point. A document doesn't become real when you discover the person holding it has power. It was real the whole time. The question is, why it took a federal badge for anyone to believe that. The reporter asked if she was angry. I was never angry. I was tired. There's a difference. Anger runs out. Tired doesn't. She declined all other interviews, went back to work, kept flying, kept auditing, kept doing the job she had done for years, quietly, thoroughly, without needing anyone to know her name. That was the thing about Whitney. She didn't change after that gate. The world around her did. Vance Whitaker reported to a federal minimum security facility in North Carolina on a gray morning. He arrived in a white van with other inmates. No cameras, no reporters, no hashtag. Just a man in handcuffs walking through a metal door. His social media accounts had been deleted weeks earlier. Not by the courts, by Vance himself. He couldn't take the comments anymore. Couldn't take the memes. Couldn't take the strangers who found his page, just to remind him day after day of what he had done. His former colleagues at Summit Air didn't visit, didn't write, didn't call. He became the story nobody at the airline wanted to be associated with. A cautionary tale whispered in break rooms and training sessions. Remember that guy who shredded the passport? That was his legacy now. Not years of service, not a single positive review. Just one morning, one shredder, one woman he should never have touched. Loretta Vaughan went home to Raleigh after the trial. She hugged her grandchildren, made dinner, sat in her kitchen, and cried without knowing exactly why. Weeks later, she received an invitation to testify before a congressional subcommittee on discrimination in air travel. She accepted. She wore her best church dress. She spoke without notes. I'm 62 years old. I've been flying since I was 19, and I have never once, not once, seen a white passenger's passport get shredded at a gate. Not once. So don't tell me this isn't about race. I have eyes, I have memory, and I have a voice, and I intend to use it until things change. The room gave her a standing ovation. She didn't expect it. She just nodded, picked up her purse, and walked out. Darius Caldwell went back to Atlanta, went back to his software job, but the video followed him. Interview requests, podcast invitations, speaking offers. He turned most of them down. But he started a small social media account dedicated to documenting civil rights incidents in public spaces. It gained followers quickly. Summit Air completed its first year of mandated reforms. Internal reports showed a reduction in discrimination complaints at Charlotte Douglas. Body cameras were installed at every gate. Training sessions ran quarterly. The independent ombudsman reviewed every complaint personally. It wasn't perfect. It was never going to be perfect. But it was different. And sometimes different is where justice begins. So let me ask you something. If you were standing in that line, if you watched someone's passport get destroyed right in front of you, what would you do? Would you speak up? Would you hit record? Or would you look away and hope your flight boarded on time? Drop your answer in the comments. I want to hear it. If this story made you feel something, hit that like button. If you think someone else needs to hear it, share it. And if you're not subscribed yet, you already know what to do. I'll see you in the next one. Bro, like imagine shredding someone's whole passport just 'cause they're black. Nah, that's insane. Skin color ain't nobody's resume, okay? You do not get to decide who belongs where based on how they look. That's ugly. For real. Do better.